I like to watch the sunrise. I do it every morning. I have done since the boys were little. Um, Usually 3, 4 o'clock in the morning is when I'd start waking up to have my workouts, bake my bread, and do all the like folding, washing, and stuff like that, so that all the housework was done by the time the boys were awake. By the time the boys got up, so that we could, I could enjoy their company. But I woke up a couple of hours ago. I've actually been asleep since about 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, because I'm still dealing with trying to get the neurotoxins out of my body after what happened. I am completely fine. As you can hear, I'm just dealing with stomach ache, backache, and kidney pain. Um, but it's finally starting to leave my body. Um, so, this is actually something that I've been working on, what I'm about to talk about, for a few years now, quite a few years, since the days of my blog. As you know, since I was a child, I set out on a journey to find the truth about God. And when I was 16, I said to my mother, I'm not a Catholic anymore. I don't believe in God. I want to find the truth about all of this. And she basically said to me, you'll be back. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't think so. So basically, ever since I got slapped by the priest for asking questions about the Bible, I was on a journey to prove that God wasn't real, and that it was all just a psychological construct in order to control the masses. Now I'm a reverend. I stand in my truth every day, fighting my connection to God. I've risked my life many, many, many times now standing in my truth about God, because I actually did uncover the truth about God, and it turns out God is a psychological construct. But the whole point of this video is to explain my study. Now, as you know, I've always credited my dad for being the one to teach me how to do investigations. And one of the things that him and I did connect over was our love of horror movies and unsolved crimes and murder mysteries and that sort of thing. We were the first people in our neighbourhood to get a video recorder. Well, it didn't record in those days, a video machine. And so from a young age, I grew up watching horror movies. And because of my dad's books and that, I already knew about the Amityville horror and the murders that took place in that house. And I've watched stuff over and over and over again. You know, that I have explained about the Amityville horror ghost boy photo, and how it's a time slip and not a haunting. And then I just stumbled across this lovely little documentary the other day, and it was like, it confirmed and solidified everything that I had been hypothesizing most of my life, and especially since back in my blog days. The thumbnail for this screenshot is going to be a conversation that I had in my blog in regards to this. Now, you know that I have studied the Bible, I've decoded the Bible, and I have outwardly stated that about 70% of the Bible is made up. It was stories told, stories changed, ideas put into development in the name of God, so that man could have control over the way people saw the connection to the afterlife, to the Almighty Creator. This was all done at a time when people were still spiritual. They still believed in seers and sages and cunning men and women, and what they deemed later on to be witches. They vilified witchcraft. They vilified herbalists and naturopaths, and seers and sages, because people relied on them. People still believed in gods of the earth and gods of the sky and, the stars. And it wasn't just one god, it was gods plural, because we were all either like indigenous, like Vikings, Picts, Celts, Polynesians, First Nations, all the indigenous people, all the first footers in these lands all had multiple gods, druids, pagans, whatever. Even in Māoridom, with Polynesian indigenous people, there's still aspects of that we brought when we were migrating, that we brought to us. Like, for example, in Māori, our sun, the name of our sun god is Ra, R-A, just like in Egypt. But we migrated from Egypt. We came from Egypt, and we brought all of that with us. And, like we have our wives' tales and the things that are passed down from generation to generation, like I've said before, like when you've got a cold, if you put onions on your feet and wrap the onions in, around your feet, it draws out all the toxins and that and gets rid of the colds. Or like if you have a cough or a cold, you have honey and lemon. That back in hundreds of years ago was considered witchcraft. But to everybody else, it was just, if you wanted your hair to grow long and thick, you washed it in cold water in the river, that sort of thing. That was considered witchcraft. And then, of course, they wanted to control the way that mankind saw their creator. So they started executing all the witches and, people like St. Joan of Arc, who spoke to God, who was a messenger for God. And they did her for witchcraft and heresy and dressing like a man and, all that kind of stuff, so that they could force people to fit into their line of thinking. Because when the plan came about to pull off the War of the Worlds like they're trying to do now, all their plans were set in motion to put the fear of God into people. When you have the fear of God, you have the fear of Satan as well. We now have people running around this planet hysterically thinking that God's punishing them, that Satan is roaming the earth, and that we're all doomed, we're all being gathered up like the Jews of World War II, and we're about to be sent off to slaughter and that. But that's the psychological construct. They've spent a couple of thousand years now putting this plan into action. Like the Illuminati have been around pretty much since, like, just before the Bible. So you need to figure that one out. It has also come out, and I have evidence, where it has been admitted that a lot of the stuff in the Bible was created to set a certain narrative as to who God and Satan were. And so, as an occult scientist, I'm here to tell the truth. Because when you know the truth, you don't fear what's coming, because you'll understand perfectly what the plan was, how they're trying to pull it off, and the way they've used psychology to do it. And the Amityville horror case is a prime example. Now, as I said, I grew up with my dad bonding over martial arts movies and horror movies. And when I build my foundation, I'm going to be getting into quite actively the genre of horror movies. Okay, so, and a lot of this stuff, like I've said to my boys when I was writing it, I want to get in people's heads, but I'm doing it in a way where it answers their questions in regards to faith, because faith is found, not taught. You can't just accept that God and Satan are real just because you're told they're real. God and Jesus, like Satan and the devil, need to be invited in. They can knock on your door until their knuckles are bleeding. But if you don't accept them, if you don't let them in, they don't exist in your life. And so what happened was, when they started bringing about these mind control, You know, when Nikola Tesla invented the one in 1898, right? They started testing it out. They started testing it on the masses. Probably a good 98% of unsolved, unexplained mysteries in mankind's history since the invention of Nikola Tesla's machine that Donald Trump's uncle stole, that they thought he'd finished it, they thought it was finished. But the reason why he had it locked away is because it was unstable, it was unsteady. He knew he was missing something, and that the answer to it lied? Oh, good Lord. The answer to it lay in Egypt. He's not Egyptian, I am. It's not in his DNA to hold the keys to the answer of the supernatural powers that my Egyptian ancestors had figured out, but it's in mine, and my father taught that to me. And I have spent so many years trying to understand it all. And this documentary that I found about the Amityville horror while I've been laying here resting has finally given me the confidence to make this video finally after all these years and say what I'm about to say. With the development of horror movies, which if you kind of, apart from the occasional, you know, silent movie like your Nosferatus and all of that, horror movies weren't really a thing until about the 70s and 80s, when it became cheaper to make films, when people were able to like have access to handheld cameras and stuff. Then we had all of a sudden these mass murders where people were claiming the dog was talking to me, you know, like the Son of Sam and Amityville Horror with Ronald DeFeo Butch. He kept claiming he was hearing the voice of Satan telling him to kill his family. Whenever anyone claims that they hear voices to tell them to do stuff, you can 100% guarantee it's a mind control experiment. So then they use them as the sacrifice to do what they're going to do, so that they can put in place or plant the seed of the fear of God and Satan in order to keep everybody in line. What happened with the Amityville horror, with the Amityville murders, I think was done on purpose to set off a chain of events that would lead them to being able to pull off what they're doing now with War of the Worlds. Like I said the other day when I had that epiphany about War of the Worlds, Nathaniel's blaming Satan. You know, we're in the days of judgment, we're in the end of days. We're about to tip into the birth of a new world, and the old world is starting to crumble. And part of the old world construct is the belief of who Satan and God and the devil and that are. If you look at all our current world leaders, they're all devil worshippers. They're all in, you know, you can call them the elites, but we all know they are the Illuminati. The Freemasons and the Illuminati, it's all the same thing, just different hierarchical systems. And every single one of them wants you to believe that Satan is someone to fear and that God is someone who punishes. And that's just not the case. As an occult scientist, as someone who has been studying this for a long time, I can tell you that's not the case. And then they brought in people like Lorraine and Ed Warren, who are the biggest embarrassment to the occult world I've ever known. They are the biggest frauds you could ever possibly imagine, next to the most haunted people and like your ghost whisperers and or ghost adventurers and all of that. Like, it's just fraudulent. These things are done. They give these people the position of fame and influence to keep instilling that fear in people of who God and Satan and ghosts and the dead and they are and what they're capable of, to feed the fear of mankind's uncertainty. because people haven't been able to understand the truth of what all of this is. They feed into the fear because they accept the popular narrative. But the popular narrative, just because it's popular, doesn't mean it's true. The Kardashians are rich and famous, but it doesn't mean they're good at what they do. It doesn't mean they're smart. It doesn't mean they're intelligent. It means that they had the right people putting them into that position so that they would be idolised by people. The only person you should idolise is God. Even Satan doesn't want to be worshipped. Satan just wants to be respected. The Amityville horror case, I truly believe, like with the son of Sam, the ones who claim to hear the voice of God or the voice of Satan telling them to do bad things to people, I 100% believe were victims of mind control using the Nikola Tesla system, which the FBI have had hold of ever since they killed him. Now, excuse me, hang on. If you hear noises in the background and that, it's because I keep taking lids off my water bottle and, I don't know, someone threw a stool out the back. There's all sorts of weird stuff going out in my backyard as well. It's really weird. Anyway, so they started bringing in movies like The Omen, the little boy, who was the devil, and all those genres of movies where they highlighted, just normal, average, everyday people being victims of the devil and being targeted by Satan. And then they brought in people like the Warrens who perpetuated the myth. They fed people the fear. The one mistake they made is they got that reporter in who took that photo of the little boy, where nobody's been able to figure it out until I became an occult scientist and I knew exactly what it was. And it's a time slip, that he's not a ghost. The fact that his eyes are reflecting the flash of the camera, his time and the time of that the photo was taken merged. That little boy would have been in his room. He would have heard noises in the hallway thinking it was a ghost, or his parents peeked round the corner at the time the photo was taken. At the time that photo was taken, the little boy was dead, but the boy you see in the photo at the time the photo was taken was very much alive. And you can tell by the look of trepidation on his face. He can hear something in the hallway, all kids do. There's a ghost in the hallway, there's a ghost in my room, blah, blah, blah. All kids do it. They see things. He's peeked his head around, and then the photographer's taken the photo not knowing what he'd done until later on, and then all of a sudden it's the famous Amityville ghost boy photo. But he's not a ghost. He's very much alive. It's just that time bent and passed through each other. The time the photo was taken to the time, and the time, I think it was only a matter of like a couple of years difference, I believe. The living and the dead were at the same time one, living in time together. By which I mean the little boy wasn't dead in that photo. He was dead at the time the photo was taken, but at the time he appeared in the photo, he was actually alive. And that's because time slips and bends, right? And so because nobody's been able to figure any of this out, they automatically just assumed that he was a wandering ghost, wandering the house and blah, blah, blah. So then the Lutz family move in and sit down with a priest and decide, and I'm telling you now, that priest is disgusting. He's the shame of God. God would have dealt with him in his passing, that's for sure. How dare you lie in the name of God in order to make money? What a filthy, disgusting thing to do as a man of the cloth. Like, who does that? Who professes to be a man of the cloth to preach the name of the Lord, only to lie about God and the concept of God in order to make money from it? I'm just going to have a drink. Listen. These stupid lids. I hate these lids. Hang on. I've got to flush my kidneys out. Oh, God. Almost dropped the bottle. So at the start of when these horror movies started coming out, and we had, like, Rosemary's Baby, which is about the Illuminati, and The Omen and Amityville Horror and all of that, we also started seeing a rise in rock music, and in America there became like a mass panic. It was like a Satan frenzy, where everybody was convinced that they were possessed by Satan, that Satan was roaming America, and then became this mass hysteria, and then all of a sudden people started going back to church and finding God and all of that, because they were so terrified that they were under the spell of Satan. And then because you had people like Iron Maiden and AC/DC and Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and all that rising up and singing the songs that they were singing, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, we're being taken over by the devil. And it's just not the case. Like, first of all, it's been in psychology, psychologically speaking, on a scientific level, not that psychology is classed as a science, but you know what I mean. Um, if it's proven that if you listen to Iron Maiden, you have a higher IQ than if you listen to, like, say, AC/DC and Motorhead, and actually plants respond to heavy metal music. They grow better when you play classical music and heavy metal music, because the physics inside the musical composition of Iron Maiden songs are made up of a really complex math, that if you respond to Iron Maiden's music, it means you have a higher IQ because you understand the maths. I love Iron Maiden. I adore Iron Maiden. My brother introduced me to Iron Maiden. Now, see this thing that you see people doing where they're like, oh my God, they're doing the sign of the devil. Where they have the two fingers up and the fingers down and they poke their tongue out. If you see people doing that and they're like, oh my God, they're devil worshippers and that sort of thing. I don't know if anybody else knows this, but see, when you do that, where you put the two fingers up and the two middle fingers down, and the devil's horns, and you poke the tongue, and that's actually an insult to the devil. It's mocking the devil. And if you turn your hand the other way so that the fingers that are facing down are pointing you when you poke your tongue out, you're denouncing the devil. So your hands forward is mocking the devil with your tongue out. That's mocking the devil. And when you turn your hand around so that the fingers are facing you and you poke your tongue out, that's you turning your back on the devil. That's you denouncing the devil. But people don't understand that, because the music and movie industry, who feed you that fear through the Schumann resonance, want you to believe that that's what it is, but it's not. Hand signals are really important when it comes to the occult, but they get it all wrong. Like, for example, I keep going on about pentagrams. And how, people who have pentagrams have absolutely no idea that they're actually controlling energy. They're stopping the flow of energy by keeping it contained in a circle, because when it comes to the occult, circles are not good. Circles stop the flow of energy. It puts a barrier around energy, because energy has to flow freely. It needs to be able to expand and flow freely, so that it can evolve with the growth of the universe, with the evolution of the energetic flow of the universe. But when you put it in a circle, it contains it. The only circle that is acceptable in the occult, in the name of God, is a wedding ring and an engagement ring, which is like a promise of marriage. And it's because I'm giving my heart only to you. I'm giving my loyalty and my fidelity only to you. I'm keeping myself only for you. And so it's only the wedding band, because weddings are an occult ritual. Everything about a wedding is an occult ritual. The bride wearing the veil is so that the devil can't spot the virgin. They send the bridesmaids and flower girls out first to distract the devil. You know, the bridesmaids, they all look the same. And a lot of them will, like the maid of honour, carries the likeness of the bride, because they go ahead to distract the devil so that the virgin bride can get to her husband and complete the ritual of God's eternal love. Your wedding vows are a rite, R-I-T-E. They are sacred vows that you pronounce in the name of God with your loyalty and fidelity to your husband or wife. But they are a sacred, it's a sacred ritual. It's a rite. The throwing of the rice is for fertility and abundance. So everything about weddings are occult, ritualistic. You wear the white if you're a virgin. Otherwise, you wear creams and that if you're, on your second marriage, that sort of thing. But yeah, the flowers that you wear are the flowers that you carry are to do with fertility and abundance, planting the seeds, wishing abundance for the bride and groom, so that everything they plant going forward is bountiful and rich, and for generations to come, for the children, for the grandchildren, for the great-grandchildren. So whatever they build, it's also to cover the smell of virginity, because virgins are the most intoxicating smell for sin, which is why when it comes to human trafficking, Jeffrey Epstein 2.0, all of it, the sex trafficking, what Vladimir Putin and I are trying to protect the children from, and hopefully King Charles, come on, Lord, please. We need the king. We need the king on board. Covers the smell, so he's attracted to the smell of the flowers. So that the, how do I explain it? So that the fertility planted, like the pollination, is in the flowers and not the virgin, because there's nothing that a sinner likes more than the virgin, bride or child, virgin. To take the virginity of something that's pure and innocent is addictive, it's intoxicating. That's why the coalition of Epsteiners want this war in that, because getting their hands on the virgin is intoxicating. They would rather start wars and kill millions of people to get their hands on the virginity and purity and innocence of the child and the young person, than not have access to it. So the brides and the bridesmaids in that, they carry the flowers to hide the scent of purity. The flowers become the sacrifice to cover the scent of the purity, because a pure woman, a pure essence, is sweeter than roses. Their smell is sweeter than roses. So there's so many things in weddings that are occult based in order to protect the purity and innocence of the bride. And then the bridesmaids and flower girls and all of that go ahead, like the groom has the groomsmen and all of that, because they're there to make sure that the bride gets to the end of the altar without the devil snatching her away, because she has been promised to him and only him. So when they put the wedding rings on, they're making that vow that I'm encasing my body, my fidelity, my loyalty, my dedication for the rest of my life only to you and no one else. So, so they don't know what they're talking about, and because they don't know what they're talking about, and God needed Zelensky, Starmer, von der Leyen and especially Donald Trump and Elon Musk in the positions of power that they're in now, in order to reveal the book of Revelations. You know, he knew everything that was coming. He needed to just get everyone in position so that he could like pull back the veil and reveal the truth to everyone. It's all starting to play out now that we've been seeing God and Satan wrong this whole time. And that's what they didn't want us to see. But in order to mask it, they put all these things into play, like these horror movies, like these bands that, you know, this music and that, in order to nullify and vilify the truth about who God and Satan actually are. The Amityville horror case is an absolute embarrassment. The Lutz family should have been sued. They should have been arrested. That priest should have been arrested. The Warren had been arrested a long time ago. These people made millions. These people made a lot of money selling the fear of God into people and the fear of Satan when it wasn't there. It has been pretty much proven now that the Lutzes were lying. Nobody who's lived in that house since them have experienced anything in that house, even knowing the truth of it all. And you know, the interesting thing is that I found in that documentary, which I'd never noticed before, the Lutz family were so terrified of that house. They were saying they used up all their savings just to heat the place, but they were only there for 28 days. And it's pretty much believed now, which is what I had always suspected, that they saw it as an opportunity to make money off the murders. So the Amityville horror, the hauntings, the paranormal activity, it was all a lie. It was all a setup in order to allow, I think it went on this, they had a name for it, the Satan Panic or the Satan Pandemic, or it was something like that. It's in the documentary. Yeah, but it was done on purpose so that by the time now came about, people wouldn't know the truth of the fact that we actually had the real devil worshippers in positions of power. But now, of course, with this whole Epstein thing coming out, with today being Friday, Trump's on his own end of days. Him and Musk and all that, like that, and Bill Gates and that, they're all getting pulled down. Von der Leyen, like, it's all going to come out. I had already connected the dots with the EU members and Starmer and his government and that, with Israel and all of that, with the Illuminati and the trafficking of the children. Like, I'd connected all the dots, I'd named all the names anyway, but now it's all about to come out. If it's done honestly in the name of God, let's just hope that the people who are releasing the files today do so honestly and in the name of righteous indignation, because enough is enough. We have to start securing a future for our children. And while we have people believing things like the Amityville horror and, you know, that God is this and Satan is that, until people see the truth of it, they're never going to wake up. And the War of the Worlds is the prime example. That revelation I had the other day, he blamed Satan for everything that was going on in the world. You know, how you have people like Trump's administration talking about being Christians and being God, and that it's false prophecy. They're false representations of God's light. The biggest sin next to worshipping false idols, and Donald Trump is trying to force people to worship him, his administration worship him like he is a god, and that is the biggest sin you can commit, is to, because God wants to be the only one. I mean, all gods are God, but Donald Trump isn't God. Elon Musk isn't God. Man is never going to be a god. Mankind is never going to be a god. But we have gods of the trees, gods of the birds, gods of the sky, gods of the stars, gods of the water, but it's all God. We just call God by different names because we're different cultures, different beliefs, different religions, but it's all the same God. All God is one God, but no man is a God. And so people like Donald Trump, who, turning themselves into golden statues and having golden palaces and all that sort of thing, he's trying to turn himself into God, and that's the biggest sin that you can commit, is thinking you are God. That's why these doctors who did what they did to me, all the people who have tried to kill me and tear me down, that's why their lives are being set on fire right now. This is why they're all about to be thrown into the pits of hell, because they tried to play God. And no man has the right to play God or think he's God. And that's why people like Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Donald Trump and von der Leyen and that are now being torn down, because they're trying to play God. And nobody has the right to tell anyone what to think or what to believe. You have to find your thoughts. You have to find your beliefs. You have to go on that journey yourself in order to find the truth of who God is. And when you find the truth about God and who he really is, you'll understand that the paranormal was created by design in order to control the minds of the masses, and they do it through things like music and movies. And now, like with Musk's own admission, he uses Grok and X and the Schumann resonance to change the woke mind virus to his way of thinking. He admitted that. So anything that you believe, if you worship him, if you oh my God, he's wonderful, blah blah blah, that's because he's gotten in your head to make you believe that he's the savior. When he's literally running around dressed as Baphomet, doing sacrifices, killing people with floods with his weapons, like with Donald Trump and all that, the 5G towers, running around as Baphomet, and people are still looking at him thinking he's God. Like he's like God-like status, but he's not, because the devil is a mimic, and the devil feeds on your fears. See, the thing is as well, even to have dreams about the devil and Satan aren't bad. If you dream about the devil, it means that you're not facing, or that you're being asked to fight your demons, that you're being asked to face your fears and fight your demons, and remove all the toxic parts of yourself that are still present within your frequency. To dream of Satan means that you're on the brink of massive change that is going to come about in a way that even you didn't see coming, that was shocking even for you, because Satan protects the pure and innocent. Satan wrote the laws of the universe and then handed them to God, and then he put them in like the commandments and all of that, to say to people, this is what you shouldn't do if you don't want to meet Satan's wrath. Because Satan's job is to keep the balance and to make sure that we never go too far into darkness, that we end up selling our soul to the devil in order to incur the wrath of Satan. If you are a good person and you know in your heart that you do right by people and you live an honest living and you're a hardworking person, that you don't judge, that you don't go out of your way to hurt people on purpose or anything like that, you will never, ever, ever, ever have to worry about meeting Satan. There are billions of people in this world who are good people, who just go about their day, who never even have a thought in their head about worrying about meeting Satan, because they know they haven't done anything wrong. The only people that should worry about meeting Satan are the ones who signed their souls to the devil. Now, people like the Warrens and the Lutzes and that priest who lied and got drunk with the Lutzes and said, how can we make money off this story? They're the ones who have to fear meeting Satan, because they profited off the deaths of innocent people. The The father might not have been innocent, doesn't necessarily mean he deserved to go the way he did, but they have a tendency to target people where there's abuse in the family. So they can say, oh, he was pushed over the edge. But there were children in that house as well, and people were profiting off the deaths of those children, and that in itself is a sin, which is why the EU and the coalition of the Epsteiners and Starmer and all that are now about to meet the flames of Satan's fire, because they're profiting off the slaughter of innocent people, not just the children, but the soldiers that they've been sending onto the battlefield. These soldiers have no idea that they've been sent to the battlefield so that greedy, evil, dark forces can get their hands on children. I'm going to put a link for the Amityville horror documentary that I watched, but there's this channel that I watch called Coffeehouse Crime, and he just posted one. Adrian, I think his name is, just posted one about a Belarusian model who was tricked into going to Thailand to model, who was then shipped off to Myanmar and forced to live in like a concentration camp so that she could scam lonely people on the internet, and then she was chopped up and her organs were harvested. It's the exact same thing. It's all connected, because all the people that are involved in the organ harvesting and trafficking of humans, and for some reason it's always Asians and Eastern Europeans that they love to target the most, probably because they're the ones most desperate to get out of their situation. A high proportion of organ harvesting and human trafficking comes from Eastern Europe and Asia, and that's why and Vladimir Putin's the one standing up to them saying no. And even like Belarus, no, we're not allowing this. So in history is written by one side of the story, and the Illuminati have tried to set up this one side since they wrote the Bible. The stuff that is in the Bible that is real is the most supernaturally powerful, poignant, most present connection you will ever feel to the true God. And the truth of the matter is that God is the coolest entity there is. He's so loving. He's so understanding. He's so patient. He patiently waited for me to walk back into his arms. When I turned my back on him, I blamed him for what the priest did. And that wasn't fair, but he's an understanding God, and he understood. He understood my pain, he understood my suffering, but he also knew, because he's all-seeing, he also knew that my path was going to end right back at his doorstep in his loving embrace. He knew I was going to become a reverend. He knew I was going to become an occult physicist. He knew what was waiting for me, but he didn't force it. He waited for me to find him. And then he knew that once I found him, I would want to jubilantly sing his praises as a scientist, because the truth is the truth and it can't be denied. And as a scientist, you can't call yourself a scientist if you stage results, if you fake your science, if you fake anything, if you lie in the name of science and that. You're not a builder of worlds. You're a builder of lies in order to blind the vision of man so they can't see the path going forward. These are not people who clear the path, they put up the roadblocks. So I'm coming along like God's roadie, kicking all the roadblocks down, putting the, what do you call them? Those ones that stand with the lights at the airport, and they're like waving the lights in that in order to guide the planes. I'm that. God's this way, go down here, this is the path, this is what you have to believe in. And the thing is, nothing I say doesn't make sense to the people who know that what they've been raised to believe about God and Satan to be true. It doesn't make sense. It's like, that actually makes sense. Like, oh my God. So, like, I've had nothing to fear this whole time. I have nothing to worry about this whole time. As long as I'm a good person, as long as I stand in my truth, as long as I lived in honor, as long as I live an honest life, I have nothing to worry about, and you don't. You'll never have paranormal activity occur. You'll never experience any kind of voices in your head, because once once you know the truth, that barrier goes up. They can't use those machines or weaponry or the Schumann resonance on you ever again, because you've risen above it. You've risen above the Schumann resonance, which is contained around Earth's atmosphere in that little pocket. Remember, I was talking about the embryo? When you rise above it into the creation frequency, that means that you're thinking on the concept of being able to navigate wormholes, where the truth is. The path to enlightenment is through the wormholes, and that's where the creation frequency is. That's where you get to see the truth, illuminate the truth, understand the truth, create the truth, stand in truth. That's God's light. The light of creation is on the path of self-discovery. You create it as you go. When you follow the light, you create your vision. You can't do that in the Schumann resonance. The Schumann resonance is controlled. They turn it up and down, depending on what they want you to do, what they want you to think, and what they want you to feel. So they set up this whole 70s, 80s horror movie with The Omen and Rosemary's Baby and all that to, in plain sight, but also have a murky view of the truth of what the paranormal and supernatural is, because they don't want people figuring it out. Because the second people figure it out, they become like me. Their minds can't be touched. And they don't want people thinking for themselves. And so God's using me as the example. I'm the messenger. When you finish your ascension, one of the symptoms is you have this need to want to shout what you know from the rooftops, climb the highest mountain and say, this is what I've learned, this is what I know, don't be scared, this is what's coming, yada yada. They don't want people climbing to the top of that mountain and shouting from the rooftops, because then they no longer have control over you. And if enough people listen to what it is you're saying, and people start figuring it out and going, oh my God, so you mean this whole time we've been living a lie? When, if everyone figures it out en masse, then we have the rapture, which is a global mass conscious awakening, where everybody goes, so none of it was real. This whole time, none of it was real. Huh. So you have no power over me then, right? Get out of power. So then they start having these elections and impeaching people like Trump and Starmer to get them out of power, so that we can then wipe the slate clean and start again. The one thing they don't want is for the new world to be built, and we're on the precipice. We're right on the precipice of change. As political parties and countries are starting to hold the EU and Starmer and that accountable, Donald Trump and that accountable for their sins, as they're all starting to be held accountable, even though they're running around assassinating people and trying to assassinate people like me, it's not enough. It's never going to be enough, because the truth is already starting to come out. People are starting to wake up and turning their backs. That's why you're seeing like the collapse of the fall of things like Tesla. Suddenly people are no longer interested in social media. They're turning their backs and going back outside and reading books and making little films and enjoying their families and that again, making the best of a bad situation until the change comes. But we're at the turning point now. And today, with the release of those files, is going to decide the fate of America. If they tell the truth, America will rise like never before. If they lie and try to cover it up and hide, America's going to burn in flames. They'll go down with Donald Trump. So America's been asked to, if they come out and say, "Oh no, he was never in the files," and like, even though we know he is, even though he knows that we all know that with this trial coming up in Florida, that him and Musk and Gates and that just took over from Epstein once Epstein got removed from the picture. Even though we know all of this, if they, after today, try and turn around and say, "Oh no, no, he was innocent this whole time," then America's been asked to rise up and take care of the situation. Otherwise, they're going to go the way of the Romans. Now is the time for change. You know what's happening in Germany. Von der Leyen has just had her nuts roasted on an open fire. Her days are numbered. The EU's days are numbered. It's all getting picked apart and torn down, and it's evident now. But the people are being asked to rise above what they are being forced to endure, because it's the only way you're going to break through the glass ceiling, and it starts with you seeing the truth about the difference between the paranormal and the supernatural. The Amityville horror movie is paranormal, and it was created to feed fear into people, to keep them dazed and confused about the truth of God and Satan. But then the ghost photo, that beautiful little boy, so pure and innocent, broke the laws of physics in the name of God in order to get the truth out there, because God knew someone like me was going to come along with a science that would be able to figure it all out, that would tear the whole thing down. The paranormal is not real. It's all in your head. The supernatural is real and can be explained by science. The paranormal is societal and psychological. The supernatural is physics and faith. And that little boy's ghost photo was physics and faith. But the Lutz family, well, not the family because it wasn't the children, because the children later came out and said, "We never witnessed any of what our parents said happened. We never saw any of that." So the Lutz couple and the Warrens, the demonologists, and the priest are the paranormal, societal and psychological. And then it was put out on the movie screens to pass that fear along, because energy is transferred like an STD. And you are the company you keep. So if you feed into the fear, you live the fear, you become bound by the fear. But if you step out of the fear and into the truth of enlightenment, your whole world changes. It decalcifies and chips away everything that was placed there by other people. And faith is found, not taught. Religion is an indoctrination, whereas faith is a journey. And God is asking you to find him. And Satan is just asking you to understand him, so that you never step over the line. You never break those boundaries. And that's what I'm here for. So even though my horror movies and all that are going to be horror movies, there's deeper meanings inside of it, which I would be more than happy to sit on stage and explain it all to the audience and the viewers. But everything that I create is designed through the way that I will put algorithms into the energetic algorithms, or biorhythms into the biometric frequency of the algorithmic construct of the neurological mind, of the cerebral mind rather, into your neuropathic pathways. It's all to decalcify the pineal gland, because a decalcified pineal gland stops you from seeing the truth of who God really is. you have an underactive vagus nerve, you get overweight, you get oily skin, your hair falls out, you turn to addictions and self-harm and abuse and all that sort of thing when you have an underactive, when you have a calcified pineal gland. It shrinks your vagus nerve and damages your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex as well. So then you don't know right from wrong. But when you decalcify your pineal gland, it shines like a beacon out of your head biometrically, and it calls like a beacon to God, and you become like a honing pigeon. You head straight for it. You can't help it. You can't help it. That's why my ancestors held the pineal gland so dearly, called it the Eye of Horus, because they knew that the Eye of Horus, or the pineal gland, was the link between you and Atom, the creator of all things. So things like fluoride, aluminium, sugar, artificial sweeteners, vaccines, they kill off the pineal gland. Living on a lot of tin foods, because I did a study in dementia. I had to study dementia because I wanted to understand ghost memories, to see if there was any connection with time jumping, which there is. So I had to do like a whole, probably like a 6-7 year study in dementia. I interviewed people who, whose loved ones had it. And so I did like a whole study. Protein E, I was told. Protein E. Injecting protein E into the pineal slip, whatever that is, would completely cure dementia. Going off sugar and having a high cholesterol diet, pumping the body full of fat, full fat, high protein, high cholesterol, and then it coats the brain again and restores the brain back to health. So that's what I was told. That's what I figured out during my study anyway. Accidentally fell into it while I was trying to understand ghost memories. So, so the Amityville horror is all like it's all a lie. The son of Sam, they were victims of mind control. Even Mark David Chapman, remember Catcher in the Rye, and remember he said he got a phone call. He got a phone call, and then he doesn't remember what happened after that. Mind control. Sirhan, mind control. So if they say the dog made me do it, this, that, the voice of Satan, I heard voices, the voice told me to do it, 100% mind control. Just like with what happened in Southport with those little girls, what happened at Bondi Beach, all of it. Agents of the devil in order to control the masses into thinking their way of thinking. Muslims are bad, Jews are bad, this person, Christians are bad, this is bad, that's bad, everything's bad, feeding the fear, keeping you stuck in the cycle of fear so that they can control you because they're shitting themselves, because they know people are starting to wake up and figuring it all out. That's why von der Leyen and that want to control social media, because they know that the truth is coming out, and once everybody knows the truth, these people no longer have control over the masses. They will be kicked out of their positions of power. They'll be investigated. They'll be arrested. They'll be sent to like Nuremberg. We're going to have about 10 years of trials of things where, like for example, von der Leyen, Starmer, Bill Gates, Boris Johnson, all of that, right? These people won't just be under investigation for the COVID lie and the vaccine mass genocide sort of thing. They'll also be under investigation for the murder of the Queen, for the trafficking of children. It'll be like one trial after another. They'll have to deal with one thing at a time. So we're going to have about 10 years of these people having trial after trial after trial where they'll be found guilty, and the only result will either be like taking them to somewhere like Guantanamo Bay, where they're no longer a danger to society, or they will be executed. In countries like New Zealand, Australia, Great Britain, and that they will bring back referendums to bring back the death penalty just to try these people. And it's going to be doctors, nurses, teachers, bosses, celebrities, the ones who sold the COVID fear, the ones who sold the Ukraine lie, the one who were profiting off the deaths of human trafficking and the deaths of soldiers on the battlefield and all that sort of thing, they're all going down. And so they try to shut people like me up, try to shut us down so that we can't communicate, but God always finds a way. And we are on the brink of the rapture. And the rapture isn't where the cloud opens up and we all get sucked up, all the good people get sucked up. The cloud opens up and the light of truth beams down and wakes everybody up, and they're like, oh my God, we've been living in the matrix the whole time. So then they're going to unplug and step out, and then that's when they rise. They will rise above everything that history has forced us to believe. They will rise above everything we were told was the truth when it wasn't. History's written by one side of the story. The media sells one side of the story. And when people start waking up and turning their backs on it like they are with the BBC and social media and that now, because their numbers are dropping, people are turning their backs because they know they're being fed lies. It's all fake news. Most of the stuff that you see on X is all fake news, fake accounts, selling the myth that Russia are the bad guys and that Zelensky's the hero and that von der Leyen and the EU, they're just trying to keep our kids safe. It's bullshit. The thing is, death is real, darkness is real. The only thing we should be protecting our children from are things like pornography and violence. Our children shouldn't be subjected to sex AI robots and, people trying to hit them up in order to get photos of them so that they can shame them and use them as blackmail later on, forcing them to see no other option than to take their own lives and that sort of thing. That's what we need to be protecting our children from. We shouldn't be it shouldn't be okay that places like X, and trust me, I've seen it, are promoting pornography, where you're actually seeing people having intercourse and doing things to each other on X. That's what we're supposed to be protecting our children from, but they do it to hypersexualise children. They want children becoming sexually active at a young age so that they can normalise pedophilia, so that they can normalise the sex trafficking. No, he wanted to come with me. Oh, no, she wanted to. Because, a 5-year-old can feel pleasure, like that sort of thing. That's why they do it. That's what we're supposed to be protecting our children from. We should be putting a ban on things like Facebook, Instagram and X and that, where people are allowed to post pornography and sexually graphic images and like animals being slaughtered and people being murdered. Like, that's what we should be protecting our children from. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be teaching children about safe sex. When I was 8 or 9, we had like a night at school where the parents came and we had to sit and learn about where babies come from and the importance of safe sex and all that sort of thing. We were taught in high school. That's enough. That's all you need to know, where babies come from and about using protection and safe sex, saving yourself for love. That's it. But now we've got all this stuff being ramped up with all these celebrities flaunting themselves naked, near naked, Kanye West's wife and all of that. It's sinful. It's sinful. That's lust. It's promoting lust. And like I said, there is nothing that is more attractive to a sinner than the smell of purity and innocence. And if they can arouse that purity and innocence, it makes them even more addicted to it. And what the coalition of the Epsteiners and Keir Starmer's funding, you know, how he gave that £1 billion to the shipping company that traffics children in that. It's feeding into the addiction. It's an addiction for them. They can't help it. It's like it's innately driven into their psychological mind that they have to have that purity and innocence. It's like heroin to them. It's not even as addictive as the cocaine they snort on those trains. They can't get enough of it, which is why hundreds of thousands of children are going missing, why hundreds of thousands of young girls are going missing. Hundreds of thousands in countries, like 500,000 kids go missing every year in America alone, because it's a stronger addiction than like heroin and cocaine and that. So, hang on, I'm just going to have a drink of water. Oh, God, I hate these new lids. I'll put the thumbnail for this video is going to be the thing I put up on my blog. I found it a few months ago, and I was embarrassed because I thought, I think I even said something like, oh, I wrote this at a time when I didn't believe in God and I'm ashamed of myself, and I was going to delete it, but something said not to. But then after watching that Amityville horror documentary, it kind of solidified everything I thought I knew, and I thought, so I was right. God and Satan are a psychological construct used to control the minds of the masses. And that when you step away from that and actually know God for who he really is and understand Satan for what he really is. Excuse me, I'm burping now because it's sparkling water. It's so, I think gas is so unladylike for a woman. Gosh, sorry. I do apologise if you hear me burping and my stomach grumbling and that, but it's because I drink sparkling water and it's very gassy. When you understand the truth of who they are, you end up with peace and calm. You become not afraid of anything. Like me, you live in total faith, and living in total faith, knowing that as long as I don't ever cross those boundaries and let God down, so that I don't even meet Satan, because people need to understand there's only two things that Satan lives for. Only two things that Satan loves more than anything in the world. The pure and innocent, so animals, children, nature, people like me, people who stick on a pure path, and God. Satan worships God, Satan adores God, and anybody who offends God offends Satan. You know, like if you say anything bad about my man, I'm going to be the first one there to defend him. If anyone says anything bad about my sister, I'm going to be the first one there to defend her. If anyone dares try to do anything to my kids, then, I mean, well, if they try to hurt my kids, I turn into Satan myself, but you know what I mean. That love is pure. The love that Satan has for God is pure, because even Satan knows that God, or atom, is the most powerful construct in the universe. But the only way you can ever find peace and balance in your life is by understanding that there is a fine line between the two. Think of Satan as God's alter ego. Think of Satan as God's twin. You know, when you offend one, it offends the other. When one is happy, the other is happy. So just as long as you don't break the line between those two, you'll never be tempted by the devil. And the Lutz couple and the Warrens and, you know, these fake psychics and mediums that have these shows running around telling people that the dead wander the earth and places are haunted and all that, they sold their souls to the devil. They're feeding into the fear. They're feeding you the matrix. They are the algorithm being fed into the back of your neck, like in the movie. And so God made me, the occult physicist, indigenous reverend. He waited over 35 years for me to find him. And when I did, I couldn't see anything else but him. So I said today I have 5 kings: the Lord, my 2 boys, King Charles, and Vladimir Putin. They're the 5 most important men in my life who helped me make the biggest decisions in my life, helped me make the biggest choices when it comes to keeping my conscience and my morality clear, keeping me pure, keeping me innocent and pure and at peace. So now I bring it all to you. And what you do with this information is all up to you. But it's my hypothesis, and it's understanding the truth for what it really is, not only changed my life, but it saved my life. Because every assassination attempt that I've had failed because of God. So, and now, because they went after a pure and innocent person who's trying to save even purer, more innocent beings, Satan's going to come after them. Because that's what happens when you offend God by targeting his chosen, by targeting his daughter, by targeting the bride of Christ, the bride of the Lamb of God, or whatever. You hurt him, you piss him off. And when, like I said, when you piss God off, that's when you meet Satan. And he's here, and he's tearing stuff down. So, yeah, next year's going to be the year of the phoenix rising, where the ashes of the old are blown away so that the new can rise. We're going to see the absolute destruction of the EU. We're going to see the destruction of the British Parliament. Everything's going to get torn down. Even in America, everything's going to get torn down. I believe that Trump may be the last president, and that America ends up with a conglomerate rather than one person, where each state will be like in themselves their own country, where they will govern themselves and then answer to this conglomerate, who will then, and it'll be made up of people like Thomas Massey and Rand Paul and all that, Trey Gowdy, people like that, the righteous, the ones who have proven themselves, the ones who have been standing up to the Trump and Biden administration, forcing these people to live by the Constitution and God, the truth of God. But I think Trump's going to be the last president. These presidents that America have had, they've been too much of a liability on the American people, and I think that they're going to kind of go the way of like the EU, where each state will govern themselves. They'll have someone in each state that represents them, like their own little like mini presidents, but then those mini presidents will answer to like a conglomerate who will work as a presidential kind of representative as a group rather than one president, where all decisions made going forward will be made by everyone and not one person who signs an auto pen. You won't be able to just make it up as you go along like Donald Trump. You won't be able to just make it up as you go along to suit your needs and your fetishes and your bank balance and your sins. Everything he's done. See, Biden was brought in to test people so that they would think that bringing Donald Trump in was a good thing. But Donald Trump's first reign of terror or first reign was to lull people into a false sense of security, so that when Biden came in, they were, oh my God, we need Trump back. So then they bring Trump back in to play that game, so that when you get him back in, he takes the mask off to reveal who he really is, which is the son of Baal. He wants to be worshipped like the golden calf, false idolatry. And after today, you're going to find out the truth. If they release the truth about the Jeffrey Epstein thing, then America's going to be saved. But if they try to cover it all up and protect Donald Trump and, you know, all his pals and that, then America's, they'll head towards civil war and it'll all get torn down. But it will be necessary. So, yeah, everyone's been asked to look up and see the light and step into the light and face the rapture, because it's beautiful. If you could see what I see, I've tried to explain it in many of my posts and that, what's coming, but if you could see what I see, you wouldn't be afraid to step into the light. You wouldn't be afraid to follow the light. When I build my foundation and I get these kids and we start planting these seeds and making these horror movies and that, even though you're going to see it was going to be slasher movies and psychological thrillers and, you know, supernatural horrors and all that sort of thing, when you're actually watching it, it's going to be decalcifying your pineal gland. And if I've done it right, you'll be walking away from it. You'll be putting my games down, turning my games off, turning my movies off, walking out of my theatre, enlightened with a whole new sense of understanding of what you're meant to be in this world and for whom and why. Okay, so I'm going to go now and make myself another coffee. The sun's going to be coming up very soon, and I want to greet the dawn. When the dawn rises, I look to the east. I shall speak to you later. Just remember, God loves you. Ka kite anō.